Good afternoon, friends. Welcome to another session of ACFO Webinar Wednesdays. Always happy to be here. Danny Richard, as usual, from Gatineau. We are going to be having an interesting one today about competitions, conquering competitions. If you recall, last week we had professional development, so the training, the technical, the social, the leadership skills, the comm skills, and everything you need to further not only your knowledge, but your career. But really today we're going to be focusing on the competitions themselves, do's and don'ts, pitfalls to avoid. And hopefully this information will be useful to you. We had a networking event, perhaps it was, I think maybe a year ago, specifically on networking and competitions. It was a massive success, so I'm happy you guys are joining us today. As usual, before we begin with the actual presentation from Shannon Nauss, we're going to give you an update on COVID. Similar to last week, not much to mention here. I just want to make a specificity that everyone is teleworking for now. The more I talk to the CFOs, the more they are saying that telework is the new normal moving forward. That doesn't mean that everyone's going to be teleworking all the time, but there is no rush for our members to return to work. So the same message applies. If anyone is asking you to return to work and this doesn't make sense to you, please contact us at ACFO. At minimum, at very minimum, we're holding pattern up until September. We've actually sent a communique on this yesterday. It's on our website right now that outlines our policy, what we think about in terms of the return to work and how it should happen. In terms of equipment, I think that's the most questions we're getting right now is, does the employer have to provide me with the equipment at home? And the answer is sort of. What I mean by that is you do need to have at least bare bone minimum to do your job, right? Most of you have a laptop, which allows you to do your job, but you might not be performing as optimally as you normally did because you don't have dual monitors, you might not have the wireless mouse, you might not have the chair, the desk. So if you do see a dip in your productivity, be transparent with your boss. Just say, hey, I'm cognizant that me getting more equipment is not the priority right now, but have that dialogue and say, just so you know, here's what I need to do to be at my top productivity level. That might include a printer or a scanner or another dual monitor or just a bigger monitor. So have that communication with your bosses to ensure that they know what your needs are, because there's going to be a wave of requests coming in. Because right now the priority is anybody that has a doctor's note for accommodation needs, and then there's critical employees. And suspect in a few months, we're going to have a list of, okay, what does your employees, what do they need to actually work from home? So make that list available, but be patient, right? What we don't want is for you to come in guns blazing and say, here's what I need it today, otherwise I can't do anything. No, just be transparent and understanding. However, if you do have something that is preventing you from work full time, be transparent. Or if you have something that's a medical issue, right? If your chair is not supporting you properly and you have to get up every 15 minutes and you need something more urgently, have that dialogue. As usual, friends, if something doesn't make sense to you or you feel you're being treated unfairly, communicate with us at ACFO because we can coach you. We can ghostwrite for you. Your employer doesn't know that you're contacting us, and we would never just take your information and come in and file complaints for you. It just doesn't work that way. So we're here for you. That's what matters. Let's talk about today's topic, competitions. Friends, this is something that ACFO takes at heart because we know it's important to our members. We know that not only your workplace needs to be safe and challenging and rewarding, but we get a lot of questions on how come I can't get promoted or deployed, or I'm doing all the right things, but something doesn't seem to be working. Meanwhile, I'm sure you all know someone that was promoted and you don't think they were as competent as you, and they probably weren't, but they had better social skills, or maybe they had better networking skills. So we're going to be talking about that. Before I introduce Shannon Nauss, who's a presenter today, I want to let you know again how we'll be taking questions. So our questions will be done via Slido. So you go on slido.com, S-L-I-D-O. Oh, I actually did this chart again. So you go on slido.com. Can you guys see this? Slido.com. You put in this little password, ACFO-ACAF, and they'll give you access to ask any questions or comments that you might have, and you can prioritize the questions. So it's your way to interact with us completely anonymously. I will show this again prior to us taking questions. So let me introduce today's speaker. So Shannon Nauss is with the Office of Controller General. So she's at TBS, and in TBS, there's the Controller General's office, who their team's called Financial Management Community Development. So they're a team that their sole purpose is to recruit, develop, and retain financial professionals. So that's what they do. And they actually sometimes run competitions. And I think it was late 2018, they ran an external FI3 and FI4 competition, and they received over 1,000 applicants. So they're used to doing competitions, and we thought it'd be a good idea to bring Shannon for her to share really her tips and her tricks of what she's seen in real life. So this is not theory. She's actually been through this. Her team sees thousands of applications. So we thought it'd be good for her to give some advice. So Shannon, welcome. I'll send it over to you.
Thanks, Danny. I don't know if, can you see me and hear me?
I can definitely hear you.
Okay. Well, that's fine then. I don't know if you can see, I think Joe is sharing my slides. But so my name is Shannon. Nice to meet everyone. This is a little bit strange. I've never done a teleconference one like this. So it's going to be weird not to get the vibe from the room. But as Danny said, we do competitions on our side of the house. I've been involved in 3 or 4 of them now. So I've gotten a couple of good tips as we go. Plus, I've competed. I've been on the other side of it. So these really are my tips, things that I've seen over and over again. A lot of them will seem like common sense, but when you're going through the process, sometimes it's hard to remember. Donc, merci Danny pour l'introduction. On va passer à travers l'ordre du jour. There we go. Donc, je vais faire la présentation majoritairement en anglais, mais les slides sont bilingues. Donc, à la fin, si vous avez des questions en français, vous n'hésitez pas de me demander des questions dans la langue de votre choix. Mais la majorité de la présentation va se faire en anglais. Donc, aujourd'hui, on va passer à travers le processus au complet. Donc, avant la demande, comment s'organiser jusqu'à la fin. Et puis, je vais aussi avoir des conseils supplémentaires qui peuvent s'appliquer tout au long du processus. Donc, commençons avant la demande. C'est vraiment important de vous assurer que vous soyez prêt pour la promotion. Donc, si vous démontrez les exigences à votre niveau actuel, les compétences, vous avez acquis toute l'expérience, et si vous avez commencé à démontrer les compétences au prochain niveau, c'est là que c'est vraiment le temps de penser à la promotion. So if you're demonstrating, you want to be demonstrating all of the current level competencies, and you want to start demonstrating the ones at the next level, because when you get to the promotion, you're going to have the responsibility of being there. It's not you apply and then you start learning. Of course, there's going to be a learning curve. There's going to be learning when you get there, but you want to make sure that you're ready for that promotion. On our GCPDA page, there's a really good quote from our previous Controller General, Bill Matthews, he said, "Don't chase promotions, chase interesting work, and the rest will take care of itself." So if you chase interesting work, you're going to really enjoy what you're doing. You're going to demonstrate your competencies at that level. You're going to learn and work probably harder at a job that you enjoy than at a job that you dread going in from 9 to 5. So you'll get the experience that you need, and then the promotions will take care of themselves. When you start to apply for the promotions, you'll be ready. And so that's what the board is really looking for. They're looking to see if you're ready to start working at that level. And the quality of the experience is gained is really important as well. So if you're just ticking the boxes, your quality of experience is not going to be as good as if you are if you're really if you're really focusing on the work itself rather than the promotion. So you really want to make sure that you're getting the experience that you need at this level before you start thinking about the promotion. The GCPDA pages that we have, that our team has, there's a link at the end. Those are really good. The FI to CFO career path is there. This is an example. It's not everybody's career path is not going to be the same. So you really want to make sure that you're plotting your career for yourself. But remember that your career is about 30 odd years long. So it's not a race. As Danny said, it's possibly the most frustrating thing to watch someone beside you get promoted when you think that you could do a better job, but focus on your career, and when you're ready, apply, and you'll make it through the competition with some of these tricks. So keep a list of accomplishments. This is the best piece of advice that I have never taken, but take it. So keep a list of the accomplishments as you go through. These are your sort of daily, weekly, probably not daily, but your milestones throughout the year. So if you do a really big presentation to an executive committee, or you work on a project that's particularly important for the department, keep a list. This is going to help you when you do your PMA at the end of the year, but it's also going to help you when you go to apply. So I have a really hard time remembering what I did, 5 years ago in my position. If I had a list of accomplishments, I'm going to start, this is like my commitment, I'm going to start doing this. If I had a list of accomplishments when I went to apply for a competition, I would already have an idea, a reminder of what I did. So it's easier to fill in the blank. Same thing with your resume. If you have to complete the application, which we all know takes a ton of time, and put your resume up to date, get everything organized, it's just going to take you twice as long. So if your resume is up to date, for the most part, it'll be a lot easier to do. And a lot of people don't, my resume, sometimes I'll go 3-4 years without updating it. So it's a big update to do. Whereas if you do it once every 6 months, there's a little bit less of a challenge. Maintaining your second language. That also is important. So if you are looking to move, a lot of times there's going to be a language requirement, that you'll have to meet. So if you're not there yet, when you apply, not only will you have to go through the interview, the exam, that kind of stuff, you'll also have to keep up. You'll have to do a language test. And if you don't want to not go through a competition because your language is expired, or because your language is expired and you have to go do a test and you had too many things going on, so you weren't able to put the focus in that you wanted. Volunteering in a staffing process is also a good idea. So that, like I said, is the best way that I've picked up all of these tricks, is seeing what the other side sees. So seeing what it's like to be on a board, seeing what it's like to participate, to do the interview, to do the assessment, the review of the original requests. Also, speak with your manager and or mentor. This one is a touchy subject. So if you have a really good relationship with your manager, then you can definitely speak to them, bounce some ideas off of them. If you have a mentor, same thing. If you don't have such a great relationship with your manager, might not be the time to throw it out when you're doing the application. But any good manager is going to be supportive of you moving forward. So that's definitely that's something that's a personal decision. I have found when I have spoken to my manager, it's actually been easier to complete the assessments or that kind of stuff because they've been able to help me remember what I've accomplished. But I totally see that there are different relationships. So that one is totally up to you, but it's always a good idea to bounce it off someone. So maybe even a previous manager. So completing the application. This is your first impression. Start early. Don't wait to the last minute if you can help it. There's so much to do when you do an application. As I said, your resume, the application itself a lot of times takes a long time to complete. So start early as you can and review it as much as you can. So this is I can't stress this enough. It's your first impression to the department, to the board, to possibly your new manager. So you want to make a good impression. If they're getting a lot of applications, you might not stand out for just having a good application, but you will likely stand out if you have paragraphs that are half mixed with other ones because you didn't review and you had a hard time copying and pasting, or if you have half written sentences. Those sorts of things will stand out. So you don't really want to stand out for those things. Be sincere, but highlight your accomplishments. So it's important that you have to sell yourself. You're going to have to sell the experience that you have, the accomplishments that you've done, but you want to be sincere because you're really being evaluated on these things. So it's focused on what you've done, what you've genuinely done to advance a project, a file, that kind of stuff. But you do have to sell yourself. Sometimes it can be an uncomfortable situation, but this is how you're going to stand out and your experience is going to stand out. You want to read the job advertisement carefully. So these sound so basic, but if you don't read it and you miss sections, you will get eliminated if you don't hit all of the required experience. You will get eliminated if you don't follow the instructions. So make sure you're understanding what the poster is looking for and what you have to do to complete the application. And then to complete it, you can draw on information from your CV, your PMA. That's a really good nugget of information because a lot of times you'll have your accomplishments for the year in your PMA. So you can go back a couple of years and see if you can find some, sometimes that can be helpful. And then also your accomplishments document that you're now all keeping as of today. So, pour remplir la demande, assurez-vous de répondre à toutes les questions de façon complète et approfondie. Donc, il faut vraiment que vous mettiez beaucoup de détails. You really want to put as much relevant details as possible. So, and then also respecting the word count. So this one's a little tricky, but what you want to do is make sure that you are you're explaining in the amount of space that you have how you demonstrate the experience required. You also want to make sure that you fill in every asset criteria. I know the applications are long, and I know at the end of it, especially if you're doing it last minute, you just want to get it done and submitted. But sometimes asset criteria will come out, whether it be in the beginning of the assessment or at the end. Sometimes they'll use it for specific, like filtering out people for specific requests. So they may have launched a poster for one specific organization where they want to fill two positions, but they may also use it for different areas. So if you have those experiences, all the information you put in will only up your chances. Don't refer to your resume when you're answering questions. You can only be graded on the information that you provide in that brick of that box. So if you are saying, well, I have this experience, please see my resume, they won't go to your resume. They'll use the resume to substantiate what you have in your application, but they won't use the resume to find the information. If you think about it, when I did the Ford, we had over 1,000 applicants divided by 3 people. So that's a lot of applications to go through in a couple of days. We are not referring to everyone's resume, yes, to substantiate a couple of things, but if you don't complete the question, if you don't answer the question thoroughly, I can't grade you on anything other than what you've provided. The other thing is, don't simply state that you have the experience or that you've acquired the competency. You really have to demonstrate that you have that. So, you really have to demonstrate that you have the experience. So it's not enough to say, if the experience or the requirement is oral or written communication, it's not enough to say, I demonstrate this competency. I have done oral presentations throughout my career in the public service. I would have to say, throughout my position at the Treasury Board from May 2014 to present, or 2016 to present, I have demonstrated that I can deliver presentations to various audiences, including senior management. And here are a couple of examples of how I did that. It really has to be an elaborate explanation. It can't just be, I'm good at presentations. Okay, the final thing on completing the application, take time to proofread your responses prior to submitting the information. So spelling and grammar are important. Like I said in the beginning, you don't want to stand out for the wrong reasons. Make sure that your spelling, your grammar is well laid out. Avoid using technical language and acronyms. If I don't understand what you're saying when I'm reviewing your application, it's pretty hard for me to say that you've demonstrated the experience, because a lot of times I don't know what's going on. So the thing to remember is that not every department uses the same terminology. So one department might call it a branch senior financial officer, and another department will call it an FMA, a financial management advisor. If you just put the acronym, someone in a different department might not know what you're talking about. You might get lucky and get someone who does, they might be able to decipher it, but you don't want to create more work for the person reviewing your application. You want them to be able to read through it and without a doubt say that you have acquired this competency. Have someone else read through your content to make sure that your answers are coherent. That is a really good idea as well. So they'll be able to pick out words or things that don't make sense, sentences that you forgot to finish, paragraphs, that kind of stuff. So having someone proofread it is a really good idea. A lot of times when you work on something for a number of hours, which is, let's face it, that's how long these things take, you can't see the tree through the forest anymore. So you see the paragraph, but you're not actually reading the words on the paper as much as you think you are. Have someone else reread it for you. Save your application often and use Word. I don't know how many of you have gotten kicked out of the system after 60 minutes and you lose everything that you've done. Again, you don't want to lose, you're spending enough time doing these things. A lot of times what I'll do is pull it out of the system, put it in a Word document. I'll complete my Word document, which auto saves, and then when I'm ready, I'll upload it to, I'll copy and paste into the application. Also keep a copy of your job posting and the responses. So you want to start a paper trail for this competition that you're applying to, because a lot of the information you'll see is actually hidden, not hidden, but it's actually in the poster. You get a lot of information about what the application process is going to be like through the job poster, and you want to keep your responses because they may come in handy when you're studying for an interview or for the exam, but they also might come in handy, I mean, down the road if you're applying to a different competition. Even if you're applying in a couple of years to another level, you might be able to draw on some of these experiences as well. So it's always a good idea to keep the information. Donc, il y a plusieurs évaluations que vous pouvez passer à travers pendant un processus. C'est là, à partir des évaluations, que vous allez vraiment vouloir revisiter les avis, la demande que vous avez soumis dans la première étape. Donc, il y a plusieurs types d'évaluations. Il y a des examens de connaissances, des dossiers de réalisation du candidat. Ceux-là sont un peu plus nouveaux. On va passer à travers dans une couple de slides. Et il y a aussi des vérifications de référence. One thing I want to stress is if you require accommodations for any of the assessments, you want to ensure that you're contacting the people who are running the process as early in the process as possible, because you want the best chance to complete and to be successful in the process. And we've seen in the past where people don't always know when to bring it up. But if you bring it up sometimes when you're at the assessment itself, we've had that happen. So someone came into an assessment and they needed an accommodation. Well, we had to redo it at a different time because they didn't advise us, which is fine. And I mean, we were happy to accommodate them, and you will be accommodated, but it's just smoother, easier for you. I mean, if you go in to write a test or you go in to do an interview, you're pumped up, you're ready, you're ready to go. So you want to make sure that you have the best chance of succeeding at that. So the earlier you bring that forward, the better it's going to be for you to succeed. And that's really ultimately what it's all about, is having you succeed in the process. No, so knowledge exams. These are sometimes nerve-wracking, but if you prepare yourself, you should be able to answer. If you have all the experiences and the competencies, you should be able to prepare yourself enough to feel comfortable when you're writing it. So understand the concepts, read through the invitation to the exam. They're going to tell you what they're assessing. So you want to make sure that you're studying those concepts, that if there's any sort of experience in it, that you have thought of examples of how you demonstrate that prior to the exam. You want to read through the poster itself as well as the invitation. I forgot to say that. So the poster and the invitation will have all of the information about what's being assessed. You want to really focus on those things and prepare for those things. And then also when you're doing the exam, keep track of your allotted time. So make sure that you're allotting time properly throughout the exam so that you're able to hit all the pieces of the exam. A lot of times in an exam, or in my experience anyways, you have to pass each section of the exam. So if you focus all of your time on the beginning and you do really, really well, and you miss a question at the end, sometimes you may not pass through because of that. So that was actually my biggest mistake in my first competition. I didn't know that. And so there were a couple of questions I was really, really confident about, and I treated it like a final exam for a university course. So I really focused on the ones I was confident about, and I made sure that I did those ones really, really well. And then I had left the other ones to the end. I answered a couple of lines about policy. I can't even remember what policy it was. And I failed, and I was really disappointed. And when I called to ask what happened, they told me that you have to pass every section. So make sure that you know how the assessment is being graded, and you want to set yourself up for the best option for success. So a candidate self-assessment, these are relatively new to me anyways. We started using them in the FI3 competition that Danny alluded to earlier. So they are similar to an assessment at the beginning of the competition. So you're given a set of questions and you're asked to complete or demonstrate how you meet the experience, the knowledge, the ability. It kind of depends on what you're looking at, but you're expected to fill it out and demonstrate how you meet it, similar to filling out the application. So again, you can draw on information from your CV, from your PMA, from your accomplishments document that you're all keeping. You also want to complete it as if you were, like, the same tips apply to the application process. You want to make sure you're answering all the questions completely and thoroughly. You want to provide a lot of relevant details while respecting the word count. So relevant details are details that are relevant to that specific question. So if it's asking you if you have experience in baking cookies, and your answer is, well, I've never baked cookies because my parents didn't let me, that's not the question. The question would, the answer has to be how you demonstrate how you have that experience. I'm gonna bake cookies later. How you have that experience, and how you demonstrate that. So don't go into details that aren't really, I guess that kind of, don't go into details that aren't really relevant. You want to really focus on the experience you do have. Don't refer to your resume when answering the screening questions. Same thing applies. Even if you're attaching your resume, what the evaluator will evaluate you on is that block, that answer. They may refer to your resume for subsequent information or substantiation to make sure that your resume matches your answer. But if you don't actually fill in that box, they can't give you any points. And don't simply say that you have the experience. Demonstrate unequivocally how you meet the experience. So make it impossible for the person grading it to deny the fact that you have this experience. So make sure that you're really focusing on how you demonstrate that you meet that competency. Okay, take the time to proofread again responses prior to submitting. Spelling and grammar is important. Technical language, be really careful about acronyms and technical language. Take it down to as if you're explaining it to someone who has no idea what your job is, because that's what the board is on the other side. They may be working in a different area of financial management. They may, again, the departments may have two totally different policies or acronyms, technical language. So you really want to make sure that your evaluator has no question about how you meet that experience. And have someone else read it through. Again, it's probably even better if someone reads it through that doesn't really know what your job is. And you want to keep a copy of these documents as well, because as you move through, if there are subsequent evaluations, maybe an interview, these might come in handy. It's really hard to think of ideas on the spot. So these things are gonna be helpful for you as you go through the process. Okay. So preparing for the interview, same thing. You want to refer to the interview invitation and understand what's going to be evaluated. So in the interview invitation, they're going to explain to you exactly the criteria that's going to be evaluated, and the same thing in the poster. It's all there. So those are really going to help you. You want to familiarize yourself with the concepts, the competencies, the experience. Familiarize yourself with the department and agency as well. So what does the Office of the Comptroller General do? What do they do? What type of work would you be doing, and how can your experience support that team? How can your experience help the mandate of that area, department, whatever? Refer to the job poster and your application. So again, this is where you're going to want to pull out all the documents that you saved along the way. And think of examples that demonstrate the abilities, competencies, experiences that are going to be assessed. So it's really hard when you're on the spot in an interview to think of, well, I don't know how I meet that competency. I can't think of anything on the spot. If you've thought about it before, even if they put you in a hypothetical situation, it will help you understand how you would deal with that question or that scenario if you thought of an idea of how you did. So it'll help inform it'll help you prepare and just make you more comfortable when you go into the interview. It'll definitely make your life in the interview a lot easier, and it'll help you stay calm because you're prepared. So think of as much as you can ideas and things beforehand. Like I said, I used to think, well, if they're going to put me in a hypothetical situation, then I don't need it. But it's helpful because you can draw on those experiences. You can also add those details at the end. So if they say, how would you deal with this scenario? You would answer how you would deal with it. And you can say, similar to an example that I have experienced in the past. So you can draw on some of those experiences and demonstrate even more that you have really mastered that competency. And again, it's really, really, really hard to think of examples on the spot. So make sure that you're thinking of those things ahead of time. During the interview, so make sure that you're using any prep time that you're allotted. A lot of times now you'll get 30 minutes to prepare. You'll get the questions in advance. Organize your thoughts, go through your notes, make sure, take notes, and make sure that you are organized. A lot of times the interview will be used as an evaluation of your ability to communicate orally. So you want to make sure that when you're answering the questions, everyone knows that you're nervous in an interview, and that's okay. But you want to make sure that your thoughts are as clearly laid out as you can be, because you want to, again, you want to demonstrate that you have that competency. So you want to organize your thoughts, take the time to prepare yourself. You also want to provide enough detail so that your answers can be evaluated. So again, they can only grade you on what you have said during the interview. They won't grade you on your notes. So if you have it all in your notes and you don't actually say it out loud, they won't take your notes into consideration. So you need to demonstrate during the interview in sentences, in words, how you have those experiences. You want to structure your answers if you can using the STAR method. I'll go through it at the end, but it's an option. But you want to make sure that your answers are structured. So however you structure your answers, make sure that it makes sense. But the STAR method is a really good method to use all throughout the process. And you want to ensure that you're speaking clearly and concisely. So I tend to speak fast. So when I'm in an interview, I really have to take a minute, take a deep breath, and try to speak as clearly and concisely as I can. A lot of times also the interviewer will be writing notes like crazy. So they're writing everything that you're saying basically, and you'll see the top of their head more so than their face. And it's kind of like this, where I don't have a lot of visual cues. You don't get a lot of visual cues from the interviewers. So making sure that you're speaking at a pace that they can keep up, because at the end they will go through their notes, and when they go through to do the evaluation, they will look at those notes to evaluate you. So you want to make sure that they're understanding everything that you're saying. So okay, if you go through, you have 5 questions, and at the end of the time you think, oh, I would like to add some information to question 1, or I got a bit nervous, went too fast through it, but I thought of something as we were going through the rest of the interview. I want to add something to it. There is no penalty to adding things at the end. A lot of times they'll tell you up front if you want to go back and add anything, or at the end if you have some time, if you want to go back and add anything, you can. And so if you think of something through the interview that you want to go back and add, write it down. Try not to skip between questions. So if you're answering question 3 and it's like, oh, I thought of something for question 1, so let's jump back to question 1 and then jump back to question 3. There you might lose points because your ideas are going to be scattered. It's going to be harder for the interviewers to follow you. But if you write down your answer, complete your thought with question 3. So write it down so you don't forget. Complete your thought, and then you can go revisit. Ideally, I would suggest doing it at the end. Totally your call. But a lot of times interviews are like exams, so you have to make it through the interview itself. A lot of times you'll have more than enough time to make it through all the questions, but you just want to make sure that you're being cognizant of your time. Again, you know, if you have the questions in advance, you know how many there are, and you're allotting your time appropriately. So keeping track of a lot of time, that's the next point. So it's important to make sure that you know where you are. And be confident in your answer. So if you're answering a question and all you're seeing is the top of the interviewer's head and their hand madly writing, or if they're not writing either, they may be just internalizing everything, and they may have, so there may be 2 interviewers. One is internalizing and actually making eye contact, and another one is writing. I've seen that before. Or they're both madly writing. Whether or not they're writing, whether or not they're making eye contact, be confident in your answers. A lot of times what they're doing has nothing to do with what you're saying or what you're doing. They're just trying to either keep up with their writing, or they're trying to evaluate you. So if they're not nodding and smiling, it might be nerve-wracking, but be confident in what you're saying. Be confident in your answers. You prepared. You know you're ready for this promotion. So be confident in your answers. Okay, so following up, finalizing the process. At the end of it all, you will either get an email to say, congratulations, you were successful, or unfortunately, you were not. If you were successful, congratulations. That's a great thing. You made it through the process. You're in the pool. That's awesome. This is where your network comes in handy, and I'll hit that in a minute. But this is where, so you may, like, if you made it into a pool, there may be 50 people in a pool with 4 positions. So the chances are, unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are in the pool. So the chances are sort of you're competing against other people. But a lot of times other departments are looking for people at that level, or there are other areas in that department that are looking for people at that level. So once you're in the pool, that is where your network comes in handy. Also, if you're not successful, informal discussions are a really, really good way of seeing what went wrong. But if you're going to request an informal discussion, which I absolutely suggest that you do, if you can, be professional. I cannot strive this enough. You want to approach this with a professional lens, because you really want to use it as a learning opportunity. Of course, you may be bummed that you didn't make it through, or you may think that you should have made it through and you didn't, but you want to approach it in a respectful, professional manner, and you want to learn from the opportunity. So I applied to a competition in 2014, and I didn't make it through, unfortunately, and I requested an informal discussion. We had a discussion, I learned from my mistake, and 5 years later at FMI in 2019, last year, I sat down beside a man and introduced myself, and he literally introduced himself as the person I spoke to when I did my informal discussion. So he said, I recognize your name. I think we spoke during this process. And I was like, okay, great. I'm glad you remember me on a good note. So the FI community is so small. Even if you think a mistake was made, be professional and make sure that you are understanding why or how the mistake was made on your part. And if you disagree with assessment and there was a mistake made on the other end, make your case in a professional manner. So the informal discussion will allow you to have that discussion with the evaluator to see where you went wrong. And if you still disagree, you can bring it up. But the way you carry yourself will really have an impact on how they want to help you through the rest of the process. They have to follow the rules. They have to assess you based on what you provide. And if there genuinely was a mistake made, they'll have to rectify it. But the way you carry yourself will have an impact on how willing they are to work with you. So don't be accusatory, don't be defensive, really approach that in a professional manner. And I cannot strive that enough. 5 years later, I was astonished that he remembered me. And again, thankfully it was on an okay note, at least. He seemed happy, so that was good. But the community is so small. Okay, the STAR method. So as promised, this is a really good method to organize your thoughts, to organize your answers. So STAR, situation, task, action, result. So set the stage for the situation. Remember that unless you're applying for your boss's job, a lot of times the people on the board won't know what experiences you have or where you've worked. So set the stage. I worked in my position at the Office of the Comptroller General from May 2016 to present. The task. What task did you undertake for this example that you're providing? So I was responsible for community development and stakeholder management. So that's my role. And then the actions. What concrete actions did you take? So I was responsible for recruitment for the Ford program. My responsibilities included running the process. So creating the poster, creating the interview questions, ensuring we spoke with HR, ensuring that we had all of our ducks in a line. Those are the actions I took, and the result would be a successful campaign where we had X number of people in a pool and we staffed X number of positions. So the other thing is not to forget that you are the one being evaluated, not your team. So make sure that you're demonstrating that you have the competency, not that your team has it, but you had the competency. And ensure to highlight the actions that you took. So some common pitfalls: not properly preparing, not answering the question, stating that you have the experience instead of demonstrating that you have the experience, and assuming that the reader knows what you're talking about. So making sure that you're really describing what you need to get your message across. And networking. So the FI community is so small. The government itself is small, but the FI community is really small, and it's a networked community. So a lot of people know each other. So your network really includes your previous and current colleagues, your previous and current managers. These could be your references, as well as people you meet at conferences, information sessions, classes throughout the training sessions, that kind of stuff. A lot of people will go to the same conferences and training. So you're going to meet a lot of people. You want to make sure that you're always have that idea in mind. So you're not always looking for a job, but you're always looking to meet new people, to expand your network. And you want to build your reputation in addition to building your network. So building a reputation means working hard in your current position, making sure that you're known as the person who is a good team player and works hard at those types of things. That will help you in your network because your current or previous managers will know that you are a hard worker, and that will help with your references in the future. So I think we have some time for questions. And if we don't have any questions, I also pulled up a poster. So I can go through the poster itself as well and just highlight a couple of things in the poster. But I wanted to leave some time for questions if there are any on Slido. So Danny, are there any questions?
Thank you, Shannon. I cannot tell you how happy I am that you are here and share this information with our members, because Every single thing you've said, I completely agree with you. And similar to you, I wish I had known these things when I was first starting to apply for competitions. And I think one of the best ways to actually better understand all of this is to be on the other side, not someone who's applying for the job, but someone who's been on an assessment board. So whenever you have any type of experience you can gain on a competition, from an interviewing, looking at tests, pre-screening people, I would strongly encourage you to do so, because you might not realize it right now, but every single detail that Shannon just shared with you, it makes a big difference at the end of the day, because you don't want to give any reason for someone to screen you out. You know, yeah. Shannon mentioned that there's thousands of applicants when they put out a poster. So they don't have time to look at your resume and to see if you have to make sure everything is perfect, because if it's not, they're going to go back and ask you, oh, I think this is what you meant. No, they are going to screen you out. So you've got to be perfect on every application. And sometimes at ACFO, members will contact us and they will say, hey, I've got screened out. Can you guys help me? And the reality is, staffing is not in your collective agreements. I wish it were, but it wasn't done. It's not there. We have very little recourse when it comes to staffing. So don't give the employer an excuse to screen you out by saying, well, you know, I'll give an example we had. So in the application form, the poster, it said, state the length of your experience, the dates, and number of months. So someone said, well, I was there for, I don't know, November 2018 to November 2019. But they didn't say how many number of months that meant. So they got screened out. Every little thing matters. It is so important. So we have questions right now on Slido. You can see them on your screen. So if you have to ask questions to Shannon, you go on slido.com. You put in the code ACFO-ACAF. Shannon, I'll let you take any questions you want on there. I mean, I have comments on all of these, but I want to really, as our guest, I'd like you to maybe pick a question you think you'd have an answer for and make it relevant, and I'll share my thoughts as well. So Shannon, back over to you.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll take the first one, because the asset criteria a lot of times is sort of a gray area. So the asset criteria, you want to answer every piece of asset criteria that there are that you meet. So in the essential experience requirements or something, I think that's what it's called. Those are the things that will get you screened in or screened out in the initial assessment phase. But the asset criteria could be used for volume management. So if they get 1,000 applications and 800 of them meet all of the experience requirements, they have to whittle it down somehow. So they may invoke asset criteria at that point. But a lot of times what it's used for is at the end of the process. So if they're running a big collective staffing, a lot of times they're not looking to staff 1 or 2 positions. There may be 1 or 2 positions on the poster, but the department itself, by the time this process is done, will have other positions to staff. So the asset criteria will really help you demonstrate all the experience you have or all the criteria that you have, and will help you get in after the pool stage. So it'll help, if it's not used for volume management, it will help you find a position later on in the process. I don't know, I'll throw it back to you, Danny, before I skip to the next one in case you want to add anything.
Thanks, Shannon. Yeah, I completely agree with you. The essential criteria is what you need to meet, yes. And the assets are things they'll use to weed out more people. And sometimes assets will be used because I want someone in particular, right? So look, before you apply for a competition, Shannon said this, you need to make sure you excel at your current job, so much so that management has identified you for ready for a promotion, so that they want a way to promote you is just a formality by you qualifying to a pool or to a competition. And look, Shannon's an acting FI4. She knows what she's talking about. She screens hundreds of these applications. So I completely agree with you on that one. Shannon, I'll take this one, and I'll let you take the one about asking for a competency at the interview. But the question is, why do we make this so complicated? Private sector doesn't take months to hire. We lose good people who can't be bothered. I completely agree with this. Yes, it takes on average 6 months to staff a competition. This is why we're seeing so many non-advertised competitions, because people don't have 6 months to wait. The reason why it happens is because the federal government, whenever a job opens, a lot of people apply for it. So if you go back to the 50s, you could hire your brother or your sister, but it doesn't matter. It was easy to hire. And then they created the Public Service Commission at the end of the 60s to ensure that there was a fairness to the process. But when we have hundreds of people applying for the job, being fair means everyone needs to be assessed the very same way. There's no favoritism. We can't lead the questions. We got to make sure we're applying the same thing. Is it complicated? Yes, but it's the only way to ensure that it is fair. Now, that said, ACFO with other unions, we are lobbying on the Hill to ensure that we got to revamp this process. Do we want a certain level of fairness? Yes, but you cannot wait 6 months, a year before you actually find people. It's just tremendous work. And honestly, by the time someone actually says they've been screened in, often they've already found another job, they've moved elsewhere. So it's a very challenging. So I get where this question comes from, but there's a fine balance between having certain fairness versus waiting months before you actually get screened in. Shannon, over to you. Not sure if you have something to add on this one, but also the question on competencies in the interview.
Yeah, I echo your sentiment, Danny. It's possibly the most frustrating thing as someone applying to a job. Even being on the board, it's hard to, like, we lose a lot of good people, and so it's frustrating. And a lot of times, collective staffing processes are done in addition to other job requirements. So like you might be working on it half the time, which also spends a lot of the time. But I agree, like they could be way easier. So I'm gonna take the one about competencies of the interview. So that one, I think that it's a requirement for them to tell you what's going to be assessed throughout the process. So on the poster, you'll actually see an interview may be administered, an exam might be administered. It really depends. Like they want to get the applications and see how many people apply. But I think it's a requirement for them to tell you what is being assessed at the interview or what is being assessed at whatever assessment that they're giving you. So I don't see a problem if I get a question, so if you ask the board what they're going to be assessing, the worst they're going to say is I can't tell you, but I'm like 99% sure that they have to lay it out in the interview invitation. So you should have all the information. Make sure you're reading it carefully. It's got the clues in it. Danny, I don't know if you want to add anything to that one.
It's a good point, Shannon. The most of the time they will. We have seen a couple of members flag it to us that they didn't make it clear what they were assessing. Okay. But as you pointed out, Shannon, there's no harm in asking. It's really how you say it, right? You could say, hey, I see this question. I just wanted to confirm, are we assessing here critical thinking or ability to mobilize, right? Just because Shannon clearly mentioned, you want to make sure you're answering in the way that hits that what we're assessing. Don't talk to me about values of ethics if we're assessing critical thinking. We're not saying values and ethics are not important, but this is not the point of this question. So you got to really make sure you understand what is being assessed. So I agree with Shannon, though. Most of the times they will tell you, and if they don't, you can easily ask for specifications. Next question. If I've been in the same position for 5 years and most jobs require recent experience, are we expected to switch jobs every 2 to 3 years to move up? Again, a great question, right? We see this often where people are being screened out because they don't meet the recent experience. The reality is there's no minimum criteria for the recent experience. This is something that the hiring manager put in there. Often they'll put in there because they assess that this skill is something that does become outdated. So I'll give an example. If you're applying for a job for financial systems and you said, look, I worked in systems 10 years ago, well, maybe it's not as recent as it is. That being said, however, there's certain skill set that they stay updated, right? If we're seeing in a leadership role, leadership skills, they don't tend to go outdated. And if anything, they improve. But I do agree with the question here that if you find that the recent and experience criteria doesn't seem fair, you can send it to us and we can flag it. We can ask more questions. The last thing you want is for you to get a bad vibe because you're asking too many questions in a specific poster. But overall, they have the right to ask it. That's why you've got to play the game here, friends. You got to understand. Does my manager want me to be promoted? Am I adding value? Because if no one likes you and you're applying for competition, even if you do make it, you'll be stuck in the pool. No one's going to want to actually take you off that pool. Even if you're a great worker, but if no one knows who you are, it's challenging sometimes. Shannon, over to you if you have anything to add on this one or any other questions you want to take.
Yeah, I want to add, it's the quality of the experience that you're getting that is important. So you could be in a position for a year and the team is severely short-staffed and you're doing 2 to 3 jobs, which is terrible in the moment. But if you have that experience, it's the value of it's the value of the experience you're gaining in the position. So if you've been in the position for 5 years, you're not learning anything anymore, you're comfortable. Sometimes comfortable can be a bit scary in the sense that, like Danny said, those criteria, that knowledge might be a bit outdated. But it really, when you're looking at your career, I think having a job that you like is super, super important. I mean, I tried a different area and I really didn't like it. And so I tried it for experience. I didn't like it and I came back. But now I know that I don't like that area. But it's the value of the experience you're gaining in that amount of time that is also really important. Okay, so non-advertised process where a manager pulls someone out of a pool from another department. Yeah, so the non-advertised process, if you pull someone out of a pool from a different department, as long as the department has opened the pool, it's the department is assessing the criteria on the poster. So if the criteria on the poster matches the statement of merit criteria for that position, it's legitimate, because even though they didn't do the pool, they're assessing the same sorts of things that department, that position requires. So we're seeing a lot of, like, so we will run a collective staffing process. We did a 3-4 and we did an FI2. And the forward process, we're running it on behalf of all departments. So we allow departments to come in and pull from that pool, but we're assessing either very general criteria or specific criteria as assets that a department can come and pull from. So as long as it meets the requirements, then it's okay. Danny, I'll throw that to you just in case there's a...
Yeah, no, and I agree. So one thing ACFO is aiming for here is, you know how when we assess your language is good for any department. Why don't we do the same thing for all these other skills, critical thinking and knowledge of systems, FMAs? Granted, there may be different subtleties, different department to department, but once a skill of communication, of leadership, of team leading is assessed, it should be good for every single department the same way that it is for the language training. But we're not pushing that for that in departments because every department is very siloed. We need to have a way to have a common approach that once a skill has been assessed, it is good for a certain number of years. If it gets outdated, we can remove it or update it. And if it doesn't, it just continues forever. But I get where the frustration is coming from here as well. Yeah. I made it in this pool and I got pulled out of that one. So it gets very frustrating. The
other thing I'll add too is you see across departments, it's a lot of the times the same people applying to the different applications. So it takes, let's say you're applying to 3, it takes 3 times as long for you to do it, to do each of the assessments. And then also each department is assessing you. So it's just easier if they share pools as well.
Good point, Shannon. Very good point. There's one on area of selection. So given the effectiveness of remote work options, will area of selection be relaxed or expanded, hoping regional employees? And the next one is the same question. Are there any tips for outside the NHQ area for more remote areas? So friends, the good thing about COVID is it shows one thing, is that it doesn't matter where you're physically located. You can get the work done. So yes, this is something ACFO has been pushing for a while, is to get CFOs to start outsourcing some work, not necessarily just only to the regions, but anywhere in the NCR. What we care at the end of the day is the person performing the tasks, are they qualified? So we're hoping that the area of selection at some point will either be removed altogether or just expanded, because it doesn't really matter nowadays if you're working in the NCR or if you're working in Moncton. If you can show you can get the job done, I would much rather have someone that I know can get the job done versus training someone new from scratch that might go elsewhere in a year. That's really what's important. That's what we're pushing for. Any comments on that one, Shannon?
Yeah, no, the one silver lining to this whole COVID thing is that it really pushed the government to think outside the box. Like, it really demonstrated that we can do this from home. So I think I agree with you. I think we hopefully will be seeing more of that in the future, that we can be doing these things from home and from remote areas. So yeah, there was one, where to go? What is the best way to get a second language training outside the NCR? So language training is tricky. It's part of it is you demonstrating on your own as well that you are interested, that you want to get that. So if you sit and say, I demand language training and I'm not getting it, but if you show that you're taking an interest outside of you're doing a little bit on your own. Sometimes managers are a little bit more open to helping you out with that and getting you, giving you that step to get an extra way there. So personally, I would say if you're not getting it through your manager, which I mean, there's training plans and all that kind of stuff. That aside, if you're not getting it through your manager and it's really being a barrier for you to move forward, I would start looking at some options on your own. So I think universities have courses. You can likely do courses at your local university or college. There's also area like Rosetta Stone or you know, finding someone who you know who speaks a different language to start that process, and then hopefully you'll get some help as well on the other side from your manager. I don't know, Danny, if you want to address that one.
No, I agree with you. I think it's the same response. Language training is something you should put, if it's really important to you, have that conversation with your boss and say, look, the only thing I want is language training. Never mind the rest. That's the only thing I want. And if you're doing good work, I think there should be much more likely to do it. Even start off with small amounts, right? Like you said, just a Rosetta Stone license, a couple of $100 to get you on the right track. Shannon, we're getting close to 1 o'clock, so I'll just take one last question here. The one is on, there are various finance streams, operation systems, reporting, planning, etc. Can ACFO give a presentation and summarize responsibilities, jobs in each? I mean, we could, but I think maybe this is something the FMCD, Shannon, could work on. I know it's a challenge because the streams are different based on departments, but do you think you guys might be able to do a document that summarizes what the different streams are? Because I think the intent of this question is for FIs looking to move around to have a better sense of what these people do. Anything you guys can do on that one?
Yeah, so actually on our GCpedia page, there is the FI to CFO kind of career path section. And in there are the big 4 job sections. So the big 4 that we all hear about. So accounting, operations, systems, policy, and resource management. So those are there. And then there's different sort of types of jobs, types of tasks that you'll find in those areas. So that is already on our GCpedia page, but I know that we're looking at that whole suite of documents. So there might be an appetite for sure. It's something I'll bring it forward. I don't see it as a time thing, but it's definitely is helpful to see. So like I said, those 4 are already there, but I'll bring that up, and it's definitely something we can take a look at.
Shannon, thank you very much. Friends, I know this was an interesting topic. We might need to do this again sometime. Again, when we go back to regular and we can have our networking nights, we'll invite our friends at OCG again. We can continue having this dialogue, and you guys have a lot of questions. I hope it was useful to you. A big thank you to Shannon. I know you're busy and taking time for your presentation here. A nice PowerPoint presentation. Hopefully we can share that with our members so that actually they can have access to the info. Shannon, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to mention, so we're going to put it on our GCpedia page. So it'll be up. I'm going to commit to next week.
All right. All right. Thank you very much, Shannon. Everyone, we will see you next week for another round of Wednesday webinars. Until then, stay safe. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you.